In every family, there are moments, small decisions, heated words, split-second reactions, that ripple across time and shape destinies. But few stories capture this reality more dramatically than the ancient saga of Esau and Jacob. It begins long before the betrayal, long before the exchange of a birthright, and even before the deception of a dying father. It begins with a struggle, literally, from the moment they were born. Their story is not just a tale buried in ancient texts. It is a mirror held up to families today. Siblings competing for attention, parents showing favoritism, people making life-altering decisions under pressure. These themes resonate across generations. This documentary dives deep into the emotional, spiritual, and human layers of Esau and Jacob's narrative. Not just what happened, but why it happened, and why this story still matters. Because hidden behind the drama is a message about choices, character, forgiveness, and the unseen hand of destiny. Today, we revisit this powerful story, not as a children's Bible lesson, but as a raw and gripping drama of rivalry, love, heartbreak, ambition, and redemption. This is the story of how a family conflict changed the course of nations, and still speaks to us today. The story begins with Isaac and Rebekah, a couple who had waited decades for a child. After 20 childless years, Rebekah finally became pregnant, but her pregnancy was far from peaceful. She felt intense movement inside her womb, as if two forces were colliding. Confused and distressed, she prayed for understanding. The message she received was prophetic. 2 nations are in your womb, the older will serve the younger. This was not just about 2 babies. It was about 2 destinies with global implications. When the twins were finally born, the first came out red and hairy, and they named him Esau, meaning hairy. The second emerged gripping his brother's heel, a symbolic gesture that hinted at things to come. They named him Jacob, meaning supplanter, or one who takes another's place. This moment framed the trajectory of their family. 2 brothers with opposing natures, 2 parents who would each develop a favorite, and 2 futures that would eventually collide. Even in their early years, their differences were striking. Esau was rugged, impulsive, and drawn to the wilderness. Jacob was thoughtful, strategic, and comfortable staying near home. Their contrasting personalities set the stage for one of the most dramatic sibling rivalries in ancient history. As the boys grew older, the divide became more pronounced, and the seeds of future conflict were watered by parental favoritism. Isaac adored Esau. He loved his son's strength, his boldness, and his hunting skills. In Esau, he saw a reflection of the rugged tradition of their people, men who worked the land, hunted, and defended their families. For Isaac, Esau represented continuity. Meanwhile, Rebekah favored Jacob. She admired his intelligence, his calm nature, and his ability to see beyond the moment. Jacob was a thinker, a planner, a man drawn to ideas rather than wilderness. The home subtly split into 2 emotional territories. Isaac and Esau on one side, Rebekah and Jacob on the other. This favoritism wasn't malicious, but it was dangerous. Because when parents divide their love unevenly, children learn to compete for that love. Sometimes through manipulation, sometimes through aggression, and sometimes through impulsive decisions. These divisions would later ignite a sequence of events that no one could reverse. Yet, even at this early stage, something larger than the family dynamic was unfolding. The destiny spoken over the twins before their birth hovered over every interaction. But destiny alone doesn't create conflict, human choice does. And both brothers would make choices that shaped the world. The turning point came on an ordinary day. No ceremony, no warning, just a moment of hunger that changed everything. Esau had spent the entire day hunting. Exhausted and famished, he returned home to find Jacob cooking a rich, fragrant lentil stew. Esau, driven by immediate need, begged for a bowl. Jacob saw an opportunity. With calm precision, he asked for something unimaginable in return: Esau's birthright, the honor and privilege of being the firstborn. To modern ears, it may seem symbolic, but in their culture, the birthright meant leadership, inheritance, and spiritual authority. It was the foundation of legacy. Yet Esau, blinded by his hunger and driven by impulse, dismissed the value of his birthright. "What good is it to me if I die of hunger?" he exclaimed. And in that moment, careless, quick, emotional, he traded destiny for dinner. Jacob sealed the agreement, giving Esau bread and stew. Esau ate, drank, and walked away, not realizing he had just surrendered something priceless. Jacob may have been cunning, but Esau was careless. Both played their part. And so the betrayal began, not through deception, but through a reckless choice that would echo through generations, shaping nations and reshaping history. The years passed, and Isaac grew old and nearly blind. His health fading, he made a decision with massive consequences. He called Esau, intending to give him the blessing reserved for the firstborn. This blessing was not a casual prayer. It was a prophetic, irrevocable declaration over a son's future. It would determine who would lead the family, who would inherit God's promises, and who would shape the lineage that would one day influence the world. Esau eagerly agreed to bring his father a meal from the hunt, the customary act preceding the blessing. But Rebekah overheard. Her heart raced, not out of malice, but out of fear that Isaac was about to override the prophecy spoken before the twins were born. To her, Jacob was the rightful heir, not by tradition, but by destiny. Determined to intervene, she devised a bold plan. Jacob would impersonate Esau, bringing Isaac the food before Esau returned. Jacob hesitated, aware of the immense risks. But Rebekah was unwavering. She knew Isaac's choice could alter the spiritual trajectory of their descendants. And so she acted, not out of favoritism alone, but out of belief that God's plan needed human courage. What followed would become one of the most controversial acts in biblical history. The deception was risky. Jacob, smooth-skinned and soft-spoken, looked nothing like Esau the rugged hunter. But Rebekah's determination was relentless. She prepared Esau's favorite dish, then dressed Jacob in Esau's clothes to mimic his scent. She even covered Jacob's arms and neck with goat skins to imitate Esau's hairiness. Every detail was calculated. When Jacob approached Isaac, his voice trembled. Isaac, confused by the sound, questioned him repeatedly. "Are you really my son Esau?" Jacob, following his mother's plan, answered yes. Isaac touched Jacob's hands, smelled his clothes, and despite lingering doubts, was convinced. With a heavy but decisive voice, Isaac pronounced the irrevocable blessing: prosperity, leadership, and dominion. It was done. Jacob had received what Esau coveted, but had surrendered long ago. The blessing and birthright were now aligned. Jacob left quickly, his heart pounding, knowing the moment Esau returned, everything would unravel. Isaac, too, sensed something unsettling, though he could not undo what was spoken. The stage was now set for an explosive collision, one that would tear their family apart and send Jacob fleeing for his life. But destiny has a way of unfolding through flawed decisions, human weakness, and unexpected courage. Esau returned moments later, proud and eager, carrying the meal he had prepared for his father. But when he announced himself, Isaac trembled violently. The truth crashed upon both of them. The blessing was already gone, given to Jacob. Esau cried out with anguish so deep that it echoed through the tent. "Bless me too, my father." His voice cracked with heartbreak, betrayal, and rage. This moment revealed the emotional complexity of Esau. He wasn't merely a rugged hunter. He was a son desperate for his father's approval. Isaac, however, could not reverse the blessing. His words had sealed Jacob's fate. The only thing he could offer Esau was a secondary blessing, a future marked by struggle, yet not without hope. Esau's grief quickly turned to fury. He vowed to kill Jacob once their father died. This was no empty threat. Esau was strong, skilled, and deeply wounded. Rebekah heard of the threat and sprung into action once again, not to manipulate but to protect. She urged Jacob to flee to her brother Laban's household, far away in Haran. And so Jacob left home, not as a triumphant heir, but as a fugitive running from the consequences of a scheme he reluctantly carried out. Jacob's journey into exile was long and lonely, but it became a turning point in his spiritual and emotional development. On his first night away, he laid his head on a stone and fell asleep under the open sky. What followed is one of the most iconic visions in ancient scripture. A ladder stretching from earth to heaven, with angels ascending and descending. At the top stood God, reaffirming the promise first given to Abraham: blessing, land, descendants, and a global purpose. Despite the deception, despite the broken family he left behind, Jacob was not abandoned. That night, he realized that destiny was not granted to him because he was perfect, but because he was chosen. Jacob made a vow: if God would protect him, he would devote his life to him. This moment marked Jacob's first personal encounter with divine purpose. Far from home, stripped of comfort and burdened by guilt, Jacob stepped into a new identity, not yet fully transformed, but moving toward it. This journey teaches a timeless lesson. Even when we run from our mistakes, destiny can still find us. And sometimes the wilderness becomes the very place where purpose is revealed. When Jacob arrived at his uncle Laban's household, he encountered a world of opportunity and deception. Laban welcomed him warmly, but beneath the smiles lay a cunning mind capable of manipulation rivaling Jacob's. Jacob fell deeply in love with Rachel, Laban's younger daughter, and agreed to work 7 years to marry her. Those 7 years felt like days to him, so strong was his love. But on the wedding night, Laban switched Rachel with her older sister Leah, taking advantage of the customs and darkness. Jacob woke up shocked and outraged, realizing he had been deceived in the very way he had once deceived his father. Laban defended his actions with cultural excuses, but Jacob recognized the deeper truth. He was experiencing his own harvest. Still, Jacob agreed to work another 7 years to marry Rachel. The family dynamics grew complicated. 2 sisters married to the same man, rivalry between them, and Jacob caught in the emotional crossfire. Yet through this turmoil, Jacob's character began to change. The deceiver was slowly being shaped into a leader. The man driven by manipulation was becoming a man shaped by endurance. His journey was far from over, but every hardship was molding him for the destiny ahead. Over the next 20 years, Jacob built a large family and accumulated wealth, but his relationship with Laban grew increasingly strained. Laban repeatedly altered Jacob's wages, manipulated agreements, and tried to keep Jacob dependent. But Jacob, guided by divine instruction and growing wisdom, learned how to navigate the manipulation without responding with deception. Eventually, God instructed Jacob to return home. This command must have struck him with equal parts hope and fear. Returning home meant facing Esau, the brother he had betrayed, the brother who had once vowed to kill him. As Jacob gathered his wives, children, servants, and livestock, he prepared for the journey. Along the way, he attempted to protect his family by dividing them into groups, in case Esau attacked. He also sent ahead a series of gifts, massive herds meant to soften Esau's heart. But beneath the strategic planning was a deeper turmoil. Jacob knew he could no longer run from his past. This return was not just a physical journey. It was a spiritual confrontation. Before Jacob could embrace his future, he had to face the wounds he created. This set the stage for one of the most mysterious and transformative encounters in ancient literature. The night before meeting Esau, Jacob found himself alone near the river Jabbok. The weight of his past, the fear of his brother, and the uncertainty of his future pressed heavily on him. Then, in the darkness, a man appeared and began to wrestle with him. The struggle was intense, lasting until dawn. This was no ordinary man. Many believe it was an angel, a divine messenger, or even a physical manifestation of God. Jacob refused to let go, even when his hip was struck and wrenched out of place. In pain and exhaustion, Jacob clung tightly and demanded a blessing. This moment revealed how far he had come. Earlier in life, he would have taken blessings through deception. Now he fought for it honestly. The mysterious figure asked Jacob's name, a question that forced Jacob to confront himself. "Jacob," he said, admitting his identity as a supplanter. The man responded, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." This was a rebirth. Jacob walked away limping, but transformed. The deceiver had become the man who wrestles with God, a man marked not by trickery but by perseverance and faith. Morning came, and Jacob limped toward the moment he had dreaded for decades. As he approached, he saw Esau coming with 400 men. It must have looked like a war party, and Jacob's heart likely pounded in his chest. But instead of running, fighting, or hiding, Jacob bowed to the ground 7 times, a gesture of humility and peace. And then something unexpected happened. Esau ran toward Jacob, not with a spear, but with open arms. He embraced his brother, held him tightly, and wept. The years of anger, betrayal, and resentment melted in that hug. Esau's forgiveness was overwhelming, immediate, and unconditional. This moment is one of the most powerful pictures of reconciliation in ancient history. Jacob, moved by Esau's grace, confessed that seeing Esau's face felt like seeing the face of God. For a man who had spent his life wrestling with destiny, this encounter revealed something essential. Reconciliation is a divine act. Esau accepted Jacob's gifts reluctantly, valuing the restored relationship more than the wealth offered. Their reunion showed that while betrayal can alter destiny, forgiveness can redeem it. The brothers chose peace, and their decisions shaped nations for centuries. After reconciling with Esau, Jacob settled in the land and began building the next chapter of his legacy. He constructed altars, established his household, and raised his children, each of whom would later become the foundation of the 12 tribes of Israel. But the emotional imprint of his encounter with Esau stayed with him. Jacob had learned that destiny is not solely defined by divine promises. It is also shaped by human choices, humility, and transformation. Meanwhile, Esau returned to Seir and built his own lineage, known as the Edomites. Though the brothers parted ways geographically, their reconciliation served as a model for future generations. Their story was no longer one of rivalry alone, but of growth, healing, and mutual respect. Jacob's life continued to have challenges: family tragedies, internal conflicts, and the eventual drama surrounding his son Joseph. But he approached these hardships not as the fearful young man who once ran from his mistakes, but as Israel, the man who wrestled with both God and man and survived. This period of Jacob's life shows that destiny is not a single moment, but a lifelong journey shaped by endurance, faith, and the courage to face one's past. Esau's story is equally important. Though he lost the birthright and blessing, his life did not collapse into obscurity. Esau became the father of a powerful nation. His descendants settled in the rugged terrain of Edom, building cities, forging alliances, and developing into a fierce and independent people. Esau himself became a symbol of resilience, a man who overcame personal loss and heartbreak without allowing bitterness to define him. His forgiveness of Jacob remains one of the most overlooked but profound acts in ancient narratives. Esau proves that even when destiny takes a different path, dignity and purpose remain possible. His story challenges the idea that one must hold on to anger or revenge to preserve pride. Instead, Esau shows that letting go can lead to growth, peace, and strength. In a world where many cling to grudges, Esau's response is revolutionary. He demonstrates that legacy is not only built through inheritance or status, but through character. Though the Edomites and Israelites would have tensions in later generations, the reunion between the two brothers remains a powerful testimony of reconciliation. Esau's life teaches that destiny isn't always about receiving the most. It's about becoming the best version of oneself. Throughout history, the story of Jacob and Esau has been interpreted in countless ways: spiritual, political, psychological, and even moral. But at its core, it is a story of choices and consequences. Jacob, though chosen, had to learn integrity. Esau, though overlooked, learned forgiveness. Isaac and Rebekah, though loving parents, learned the dangers of favoritism. Each character reveals something about the human experience. Jacob shows our desire for approval and purpose, but also our tendency to force outcomes instead of trusting timing. Esau shows how easily we can give up something valuable when we act impulsively. Isaac reveals how deep our biases can run, even when we don't realize it. Rebekah shows how difficult it is to balance love and intervention. These lessons echo through families today. Siblings still compete, parents still struggle with fairness, and individuals still face crossroads where a single decision can define a lifetime. The story endures because it speaks to the complexities of family. Love mixed with rivalry, destiny tangled with choice, and the constant tension between what we want and what we need. Ultimately, the narrative invites us to reflect on how our own decisions shape our future. Throughout history, the story of Jacob and Esau has been interpreted in countless ways: spiritual, political, psychological, and even moral. But at its core, it is a story of choices and consequences. Jacob, though chosen, had to learn integrity. Esau, though overlooked, learned forgiveness. Isaac and Rebekah, though loving parents, learned the dangers of favoritism. Each character reveals something about the human experience. Jacob shows our desire for approval and purpose, but also our tendency to force outcomes instead of trusting timing. Esau shows how easily we can give up something valuable when we act impulsively. Isaac reveals how deep our biases can run, even when we don't realize it. Rebekah shows how difficult it is to balance love and intervention. These lessons echo through families today. Siblings still compete, parents still struggle with fairness, and individuals still face crossroads where a single decision can define a lifetime. The story endures because it speaks to the complexities of family. Love mixed with rivalry, destiny tangled with choice, and the constant tension between what we want and what we need. Ultimately, the narrative invites us to reflect on how our own decisions shape our future. Another important theme is timing. Jacob had been promised greatness, but instead of letting destiny unfold naturally, he rushed the process. He forced what he believed was already his. This impatience led to years of hardship. Yet even through his wrong turns, Jacob still arrived at his destiny, but through a longer, more painful route. Today, many struggle with impatience, wanting success immediately, wanting recognition overnight, wanting results without seasons of growth. But the story of Jacob warns that forcing destiny can lead to unnecessary pain. Esau, on the other hand, teaches the cost of undervaluing what matters. He lived in the moment, driven by appetite and urgency, not long-term thinking. Both extremes, impatience and impulsiveness, can derail a destiny. Timing, therefore, is not just about waiting, it is about wisdom. Knowing when to act and when to pause. When to speak and when to listen. When to pursue and when to release. The story shows that while destiny may be divine, the journey depends on choices made along the way. It reminds viewers that a single moment of impatience or impulsiveness can echo through generations. But so can a moment of humility and wisdom. Perhaps one of the most relatable aspects of the story is the tension within the family. Many families today experience favoritism, misunderstandings, rivalry, and unspoken resentment. Isaac and Rebekah, though faithful and loving, allowed their preferences to shape their parenting. Their divided loyalties fueled the conflict between their sons. Isaac's favoritism blinded him to Jacob's potential, while Rebekah's favoritism clouded her judgment, leading her to manipulate events. The result was decades of separation, heartbreak, and regret. Yet their story also carries hope. Despite the brokenness, reconciliation was possible. Despite the betrayal, forgiveness was powerful. Many families today carry wounds from past decisions. Words spoken in anger, unfair treatment, miscommunication, or emotional distance. The reunion of Jacob and Esau shows that healing is possible even when the past is painful. It teaches that reconciliation doesn't erase history, but it can rewrite the future. The story calls families to face dysfunction honestly, to have difficult conversations, and to choose peace over pride. In a world where relationships often fracture, Jacob and Esau remind us that reconciliation is one of the greatest victories any family can achieve. In the final years of Jacob's life, he reflected deeply on his journey. The deception, the exile, the wrestling, the reconciliation, and the miraculous ways he had been guided. He understood that his life was shaped by both divine intervention and personal responsibility. He blessed his sons, setting in motion the rise of the 12 tribes of Israel. But in his heart, he carried the memory of Esau, the brother who taught him the value of peace and forgiveness. Esau, too, built a strong legacy. His descendants became rulers, warriors, and influential leaders. Though the nations of Israel and Edom clashed in later centuries, the reunion of their founders remained a testimony of what could have been if future generations had chosen reconciliation over rivalry. The story of Jacob and Esau, therefore, is not merely history, it is a warning and a guide. It shows how human decisions can heal or destroy, unite or divide, bless or curse. It challenges each generation to break cycles of resentment and to seek understanding. And it reminds us that destiny is not shaped by one moment, but by the lifetime of choices that follow. So what can modern viewers take away from this ancient drama? First, that family conflicts run deep, but so does the possibility of healing. Second, that destiny requires both divine purpose and human responsibility. Third, that forgiveness is not weakness. It is the strength that transforms bitterness into peace. Esau and Jacob both made mistakes. Jacob through deception, Esau through impulsiveness. But their story did not end in destruction. It ended in reconciliation. Their journey teaches that life is not defined by the worst decisions we make, but by the courage to face them and the humility to change. Whether you relate more to Jacob, the planner, the struggler, the one who wrestles, or to Esau, the passionate, the emotional, the forgiving, you will find pieces of yourself in this story. Because at its core, the saga of Esau and Jacob is the saga of humanity, flawed, complex, emotional, but capable of growth and redemption. And that is why this story endures. It is not just a tale of two brothers. It is a reminder that no matter how far we drift, reconciliation is possible, transformation is real, and destiny can be redeemed. This is the legacy of a family betrayal that truly altered destiny.